first thing we need to do to make our flour bowl is make the salt dough. So we're going to take a half a cup of flour and then add that to the bowl. Next, you need a 1/4 cup of salt and then a 1/4 cup of water. Once you've added all three of those things to the bowl, take a spatula and just start gently mixing it in. Be careful not to mix too quickly, otherwise you're going to get flour dust everywhere. You want to keep on mixing until you get a rough batter. It'll kind of look like cookie dough, but don't eat it. It will not taste good. Once you've got it all kind of put together, you're going to start kneading the dough. So you're going to gather it up, and then you're going to start using your hands to fold it together and press it together so that it all continues mixing. You want to have a consistency where it's kind of like Play-Doh, where if it's too wet and it sticks to your hand, you need to add a little bit of flour. If it's too dry and it starts to crumble, you need a little bit of water. So you're going to keep on mixing until you can kind of pull it apart, but it still stays together, a lot like Play-Doh. All right, we're ready to move on. The next step is to get the dough separated and dyed the correct colors. So I'm going to be using food coloring, and I have red for the petals, I have green, and I have yellow. If you don't have green, you can use blue and yellow together. So first I'm going to take the dough, I'm going to rub it in my hands just to get it kind of loose, and then using my pincher fingers, I'm going to squeeze off the top section, and I want it to be smaller, so I have 2 different sizes. The biggest one is going to be the leaves. Then I'm going to take it again and I'm going to separate it, so I have in total 3 sections. Okay? Then, taking the biggest section of dough, you're going to open it up, apply the color to the middle. Now, if you want your leaves really dark, you'll add more food dye, and if you don't want it, if you want it to be lighter, then use less. I want mine to be a pink color, so I'm not using a ton of dye. Now I'm going to start folding the dough into the middle. So you can see I'm taking my fingers and I was pressing it into the middle. And now I'm just going to start mixing by making a snake, if you will, right? Rubbing it between my hands and then folding it up and continuing to work the dough until it looks like all the color is evenly distributed in the salt dough. So it takes a little bit of time. Just keep working it. It's actually really fun. Clean your hands in between because you don't want the red to get into your other colors. Then open up the dough. Oop, that was a lot. That's okay. And you're going to start pressing the dough into the middle. And you're going to see it slowly start to change color. And then just like before, start rubbing it together. Fold it up and keep mixing that color in until you don't see swirls anymore. It should be a steady, even color. Now my hands are pretty dirty. That's actually just some of the dough sticking to my hands. So if you wipe them, you should be good to go. Finally, I'm going to do my yellow for the center of my flour. Just using a little because it's just a little tiny bit of dough, so you don't need a lot. And I'm going to start working it, folding it in. And what's really nice about this is that the colors, or since we're doing it at the beginning, it's going to be evenly distributed in our flour. All right, on to making the flour bowl. So the first and most important thing is to find a bowl that you're going to use to shape your flour bowl. Right? This is when it's drying out. This is what's going to keep that round shape. Okay? I'm using a glass bowl because I'm going to be putting mine in the oven to dehydrate. That's what's going to make this salt dough nice and hard and what's going to keep its shape. If you have a bowl that you really like the shape of but isn't heat proof, so it can't go in the oven, you can always use the same bowl that you like, and then you'll just have to leave it to air dry for a couple of days. So keep that in mind. The other thing you need is a circle cutter. You can use a cookie cutter. This is for a jar, something bigger than a water bottle, like a Gatorade bottle lid, that would work, or anything kind of in that size. You're also going to want a rolling pin and then either foil or parchment paper, and that's what's going to help us roll out our flower petal dough easy. So first thing we're going to do before we do that, I'm going to take my bowl and I'm going to take the yellow salt dough, and I just want to warm it up in my hands so it doesn't crack. And once I've rolled it around, make it nice and pretty, I'm going to take it on the bottom and I want to very carefully press it all the way. I want to make sure that there's no bubbles hanging out in the bottom. So you can see there's no bubbles. If you don't have a clear bowl, you just have to make sure you press from the center and then work your way out. And I don't want to do it too thin, so I just want to make it nice and flat as I can. So I'm pressing gently with my fingers on the bottom of my bowl. Once that one's done, we're going to take our flower petal dough, the biggest section we have, and again, I'm warming it up in my hands so it doesn't get dried out and cracky on the edges. Cracky. I think I just made up a word, you guys. Then I'm going to put it in the middle, and I'm going to fold it over, and I don't want it right up against the edge. I want to leave space, and fold it over, and then I'm going to give it a good press. And now I'm going to use my rolling pin to roll out the dough. You can use your hands if you don't have a roller, or you just don't know where it is, or you know, things happen to rollers. My family was always losing ours. Okay? And now to open it without pulling it apart, what we're going to do is I'm going to hold the bottom of the foil or the parchment paper, and then using the second side, I'm going to kind of use my fingers, make sure I have a little bit showing, and then I'm going to pull straight back. Right? I'm not pulling up, I'm going to pull straight back. And then I'm actually going to flip it and do the same thing on the other side. See, look, a little bit came away. That's why we want to be careful. Now, I'm going to take my cutter and I'm going to start working along the edges, pressing down all the way. I'm going to see how many I can get on this first one. I want to get 5 at least. If you want more petals, you can totally do that. I may only get 4 this first time, and then I'll have to add 1 more. Yeah, that's okay. I have enough extras that I can re-roll it and get my 5th one. So with my 4, okay, right, I can re-roll this in a second and get a 5th one. I may even be able to do it right now. See, here's another way. If you just want to press, you just want to press it down, you can do this too. And now I have 5. So I'm going to carefully peel up the edge. And then I want to press all those little clay boogers, kind of pinching the ends so that it stays nice and pretty. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take it along this bottom. I'm going to press it down onto the yellow, and then I'm just going to let it, pat it down gently and let it hang off the side. And the next one. hang it right, and I want them to overlap just a little bit. Press it down, and then off the side. So you can see it's going on the bottom, but then also over onto the side. Next one. And then over the side and press down. Press them together. Gentle. Last. Get rid of the boogers. Just gently tapping it in. And then right there. And now that all of my petals, right, you can see all of my petals are along the side. If they're not the same size, that's okay. I'm gonna now go and I'm gonna tap so that all of this comes together. Where the petals touch, I want them to be together. And it's really important that you don't press your dough so hard that it gets really thin in some places, because if it gets too thin, it'll break, right? Just like any other bowl. Okay, once you have that, I still have a little bit right there. So I'm actually just gonna take a little bit of my extra. I'm gonna make it really flat. And then I'm gonna put it right in the middle. And I want this nice and flat, so give it a good pat so that your bowl will stand straight. All right, we're almost done. Last thing we need to do, I'm gonna actually get rid of this so it doesn't make any more noise. Last thing we need to do is we're gonna take our green dough, we're gonna warm it up with our hands, right, so that we don't have any of those cracky edges. And then we're going to divide it up into 2 sections, 3 if you have more. And with the first section, I'm going to roll it, oops. And then I'm going to, once I have my snake, right, you guys know how to make snakes, I'm going to fold it in half. And then where the 2 ends come together, I'm going to press, and then I'm going to press it together so it looks like a leaf. And then I can add my leaf on the side right here. Right? So that when you look at it on the inside, you can see that our flower is forming. Okay, last one. I'm going to make my snake. And I'm gonna fold it in half, pinch the ends together. So this is like the middle of a leaf. And I'm gonna put it right here in the middle, in between 2 petals. If you have another one, you can add a 3rd one. Up to you. Make sure it's pressed really good. And you're done. Here's your flower bowl. And you can hold rings in there once it's dry. You'll be able to put keys, you can put notes, whatever you want for your mom, whatever your mom wants, or your special person. Now, from here, this is gonna go into the oven, right? I'm gonna put it on a baking tray. And this is gonna go on the oven. It's gonna go for 200 degrees for like 4 hours. Okay, it takes a long time, but we need to do it slow. If we put the heat too high, there will be bubbles and it will make it so it's not perfect. And it'll cause bubbles to appear. If you're not gonna do the oven, you're gonna need to let it stay like this for like 3 days. It still will work, it'll look totally fine. All right, In fact, the color won't fade as much. It's up to you. Here's the final flower bowl. I wasn't able to take a video, but the way you release your bowl from the mold is after you've given it an amount of time to dry, depending on the instructions and the method you used, you're going to want to start checking to make sure it's completely dry. Completely dry means it's really hard to the touch, there's no springiness, and it doesn't feel like it's really suctioned to the bowl anymore. Remember, the bottom of your flower bowl is thicker than the petals, and so that part is going to take the longest amount of time to dry. If it's really not coming off after you wiggle it a little bit, it's probably not dry all the way. So continue letting it dry out, either in the oven or air drying. Once it pops off, you're finished. You have your beautiful flower bowl. All that's left to do is wrap it up and enjoy the day. All right, guys, have a great day. Happy Mother's Day. I miss you all.